Joining us now is Tobias Ellwood, Conservative MP and former Defence Minister, now Chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Boris Johnson. Thoughts this morning, first of all?
Wow. Well, I mean, was huge adulation and love for Boris Johnson. He was quite phenomenal stepping onto the political stage of the last few years. What he did in City Hall as Mayor of London, what he did in 2019. But that adulation now has turned to massive frustration and indeed disappointment as he deserts the political battlefield. We're up against it. We know that. All your discussions this morning has shown that against Labour. And yet now we face not one, but three by-elections. And everybody's just astonished that he's walking away in this way, causing so much damage in his wake. We were just starting to settle down. We were just starting to show focus. The last couple of years has been littered with factionalism, populism, division. And Rishi Sunak is just starting to settle things down with a measured, more calm approach, statecraft returning to number 10. And yet here we are again, having to deal with these headlines, not the tech summit, and what's going on in Ukraine, which I'd prefer to be focusing on. So I hope Rishi Sunak actually takes this as an opportunity for us to be able to draw a line under what Boris Johnson has done. He's now departed the House of Commons. He won't be standing as an MP.
For now, he says.
Well, I don't think in any time soon. I mean, how could any Conservative association, accept him after what he's now done, given the fight that we have to try and win the next general election? So let's move forward. Let's recognise that Rishi Sunak has an opportunity to continue with his message, set out his stall, and then MPs can absolutely buy into that. And I think the nation would appreciate that and appreciate the calmness that there is a line being drawn above Boris Johnson.
Just before we move on to other matters, the vote will still go ahead, we're told, on whether he should be suspended, even though he's already gone. Will you vote in favour of the suspension?
Well, a lot of this discussion in the last few days has all been about the Privileges Committee report. It's still embargoed. It's not even out there for the public to see. MPs are likely to look at it very, very carefully indeed. I suspect many will not go against the actual Privileges Committee recommendations, which, bear in mind, has got a Conservative majority on it. I'll look at it very carefully, but I suspect most MPs will be supporting the recommendations that the committee made.
In other words, that he be suspended, even though, as I said, he's already gone. What's going on in Ukraine? Has the counter-offensive now begun?
Yes, it has. But, I mean, I urge caution into assuming that the Ukrainians are just going to charge in and then the Russians would be dispersed and it would be all over very, very quickly. What we're seeing is a lot of shaping and probing operations taking place over a 1,000-kilometre front line. They're trying to weaken forces, test them, see where the weaknesses actually are. You've actually got the main front of Ukrainian capability still in reserves, if you like, ready for that singular attack. The Russians don't know where it's going to be, but we're seeing chaos ensue between the Wagner group and the Russian forces themselves. That the Kharkova Dam explosion is an illustration, whether it was done deliberately or by accident, that they're not in a good position, that Putin didn't even have faith in being able to holding that dam, so critical as a bridge across from one side of the Dnipro to the other, and it will actually cause more damage to the Russian forces and did the Crimea than it will to the Ukrainians as well. So in the next few days, we should anticipate a major attack in one part of the Donbass or another.
What more can the Brits do to support Ukraine?
Well, we've done an incredible job. We've actually put forward, I think, stressed the political appetite to increase that support. That mustn't dissipate. We've got the important Vilnius NATO summit coming up. Other countries need to meet the same standards that we are providing. So more tanks, F-16s, long-range missiles. They don't need people. They've mobilised their entire adult population against this. Motivation is something that they have as well. What they need is more sophisticated, high-tech equipment and follow Britain's lead in providing that.
I'm sure you've seen Deborah Haynes' report this morning that military personnel relying on food banks forced to sleep in their offices as they can't afford the fuel to drive home. What should the government be doing about this?
Well, we have, overall, it's always a difficult picture when we see people relying on food banks. But the Armed Forces Covenant is something that actually provides a national commitment to look after veterans and service personnel, given the unique circumstances of the work that they do for protecting the country. So I'm very concerned about the reports that are coming out, what Deborah Haynes is reporting. I'll be discussing it with my committee to see what we can do to highlight this and place greater pressure on the government to meet its covenant commitment.
When will you speak to the committee?
Well, we're actually on a visit today, so we'll be discussing it today, but we have a couple of sessions this week where we'll be raising this.
And what are the options?
Well, the options are, we have to place this to the government. It's not for us to then provide the policy. We scrutinise what the government is doing to provide that critical support to veterans and those of the armed forces. But it's a very poor state of circumstances, isn't it, when we see people who have served, who are serving, having to lean on food banks.
OK. It's always great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mr Ellwood. Thank you.